Mike Elson, founder of VoiceLessons.com, and with me I have Dr. Matt Edwards. Matt, welcome to the show again.
Thank
Hey,
you.
I guess I should call you Professor Matt, but you
Ah,
do have a doctorate.
yeah,
Okay.
Matt's fine.
Okay. All right, Matt. Well, hey, welcome again. And we've got a number of questions from our singers out there and teachers too. We've got a teacher question today. So, everyone, strap on in. We're going to start to jump into the first question here. So, this is my favorite part of the week. Love answering these questions from you guys. So, if you have questions as we go, please drop them in the chat and you can say hi to let us know you're watching. So, awesome. Let's go. Question number one comes in from Pam. Pam, thanks for writing in. She writes in, can you recommend any good musical theater songs for a soprano?
So, I get questions like this all the time, and the answer is yes, but no. So, yes, there are many, many, many good musical theater songs out there for sopranos, but I can't recommend one for your student without knowing who they are. You see, in the musical theater world, it's not all about the voice. And I think that's a big shift from the classical world. In the classical world, we're looking for songs that fit the voice really well. And, it doesn't always matter if you fit the character as well. That's why we'll have middle-aged women playing Violetta, who's a young woman. And same thing as, young women or older middle-aged women playing Mimi, who's also supposed to be on the younger side. And according to the story, we, suspend belief to accept that because of the voices and the needs of the singers in the shows. But in musical theater, it doesn't work that way. In the musical theater world, they're looking for people who are similar to the character that they're playing to bring themselves into the show. And so because it's a different mindset, we have to use a different mindset in picking rep. And so the first thing we really want to do is to help a singer really identify who they are. And so we, want to try to bring that down to adjectives like I'm fun, I'm spunky, I'm loving or caring, whatever it is, nurturing, I'm powerful, aggressive, whatever those adjectives are to describe you. And then what you want to do is try to think of other musical theater performers that could have similar adjectives, people who would be similar to you. And what I want you to then do is to jump on over to ibdb.com. That's the Internet Broadway Database. And you're going to put the name of the performer into the search bar and find all the shows that they've been in. Now, if they've been in off-Broadway shows and regional productions, those aren't going to show up on IBDB. So the second thing I want you to do is look for the performer's website and see if you can find their website or their Wikipedia page and find some of the other roles that they've performed. And I want you to write all of those down. Now, the next thing I want you to do is say, if you're looking at, for instance, let's say Kristen Chenoweth, and you're over on Wicked's page in IBDB, because you're going to get a list of roles, right? So let's say you've found all the roles that Kristen Chenoweth has done, and you can click on the show title. You're going to click on the show title for something like Wicked and scroll down to the bottom where you're going to see a button that says Display Replacement Casts. And if you click that button, it's going to give you a full list of everyone who has played the role of Glinda since that show opened on Broadway, and it's a long list. You would then write down the names of all of those performers. Then you would click on the performers' names and see what other Broadway shows they've done. And again, because there is plenty of work outside of Broadway, you're going to want to look up those performers' websites or Wikipedia pages as well, and write down all the shows and roles that they've done in those shows. And you're going to continue this process, just going down what we call the rabbit hole of finding a performer, finding the roles that they've done, looking for other people that have played those same roles, and then writing that down. And you're going to see some patterns emerge. You're going to find that all these people who have personality traits like you and have, a similar persona have all played this role, or a lot of them have played this role. And if they have, then you want to look up that role and find out what songs from that role might be good songs for you. And you're going to go down this list and start with the most common shows that show up, but then you're going to search every other show as well. And this is going to be good for you because it's going to help you really get to know the musical theater canon yourself. Us teachers, we can guide students, we can give them the answers, but that doesn't really teach them how to take care of themselves. And down the line, they're going to need to know how to do that. So why not start them from the early part of their vocal training and doing this work? As they go through those shows and they find those different roles, they then want to get the sheet music for those songs, and Scribd is a great option for this. Scribd has licensed a bunch of sheet music from Hal Leonard, And so you can find most musical theater pieces that you need on Scribd. And you're going to go find the sheet music and then start looking through it and see if it fits your range or if it's transposable. If you need to transpose it, you can always go over to musicnotes.com and purchase a transcribed version or a transposed version of the song, and then start singing through them with your teacher. And if you've done this process and extensively and spent hours doing it, you're going to have a good 10, 15 songs to choose from. And then you got to start looking for what feels like it's the best fit for you and helps you tell the kind of story that you like to tell, right? Because in addition to us all having personality traits that we can describe with adjectives, we all have a point of view. And so you're going to find that some people really like to tell stories that are, a powerful tellings of people overcoming barriers to help inspire others to overcome barriers as well. So you might want to gravitate towards a song that does that. Other people like to perform just to help others forget about their troubles and to smile and laugh and be happy. So if you're going through that rep and you find a song that fits that kind of a point of view, then that would be a good song for you. And then vocally, like I said, just start working on it with your teacher and, doing the exercises you need to expand your range if necessary, transpose it if necessary, and keep exploring. Keep going back to that list. And along the way, you're going to learn names of other performers that you should look into. And you'll start going down the rabbit hole of roles they've performed. And before you know it, you're going to have more rep than you can possibly study and a list of songs that's going to serve you for years to come.
Wow, that was so helpful. I was, listening to that and going, okay, I hope everyone out there took notes. So maybe we could drop some of those links to a few of the different sites you mentioned.
Yeah, sure.
Was it the database one you mentioned? What was that one again?
It's ibdb.com,
Okay,
Internet Broadway Database.
Great. And then there were some sheet music ones too.
Yeah, musicnotes.com.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll drop those links in for everyone. Okay, Pam, great question. Thanks for writing in. Hope that helps you. Let's jump into question number 2. This one comes in from Valerie M. She writes in, what are some good vocal performance programs for a singer who wants to do musical theater? And I know you teach at a musical theater school, so you can't just talk about your school. Of course, it's a great school, okay? But, give us the honest truth, okay? Now.
Yeah. So the honest truth, because you're right. Mike's right. I do teach in a musical theater program, but my really, really strong belief is that there are a lot of good programs, and we're not the only one. So I'm all about helping students find the right fit for the kind of program that's going to serve them best as a human being, not the kind of program that fits me best as a professor. So let's kind of get though, and because the answer to this is probably not what the person who is asking is expecting to hear, which is in general, there aren't really any. And I know. And so, but here's why, and I'm going to break it down. There are some out there that do a nice mix of musical theater. I know there are, and they may not be too bad. I'd have to look at the curriculum, and they're rather new programs, so I can't name them off the top of my head, but I know people are developing them. And I do think that, there's a lot of potential down the road to start seeing some vocal performance programs that really do prepare you for a musical theater career. But the general reason why I say there aren't any is because of a group called NASM. And NASM is the National Association of Schools of Music. And they're what's called an accrediting body. And they basically force music schools to comply with what they believe is the best curriculum for different majors, for instance, vocal performance. And while they have some flexibility in there, it's really not enough to build the ideal kind of a vocal performance program to train somebody to be ready for music theater. The reason is they mandate things like 2 years of music theory and 2 years of music history and several years of diction or, foreign language. And while all those things are super important for a classical singer, for musical theater performers, they're not as important as dance and acting. And that's where we start running into trouble. They usually also on NASM dictates that the students need to be in an ensemble every semester, which usually means choir. And choir is not usually a good fit for a lot of musical theater performers. And because it's asking them to sing in a style that's different from what the musical theater profession is looking for. So let's talk about what the musical theater profession is looking for. What they want are actors who sing. All right. Yes. There you can point out to great voices on Broadway and say, but there's this performer or that performer. And you're right. There's exceptions to the rule. I'm not talking about the exceptions. I'm talking about generalities. In general, they're looking for really strong actors who can sing. There are like 30,000 performers in New York, so they can find a really good actor who sings really well. Okay. So they're out there. But if you're training to get ready for a career, you can't assume you're going to be the exception. You and just get hired just because of how good your voice is. You need to assume that you're going to be more like the general population and get to be a good actor as well. Now, some of these vocal performance programs are at state universities where you can either double major in theater or you can get a minor in theater as well. And there may be some at private schools as well. But you may be looking at a 5-year pathway. It's not the end of the world. But in one of those instances, you can go supplement what you need from the theater department. But here's the catch. Acting a monologue or doing a scene is different than acting the song. When you're doing a scene, you work strictly from the text. When you're acting a song, you're working from the text, but then having to look at the music and see what the music is telling you about the shifts in the story and how you let the music inform that and bring it to life. You also need to study the roots of the different kinds of music that influence musical theater. In the classical world, what influences is what came before. But in the musical theater world, we have to not only look at operetta, which was the major influence more than opera. You also have to go in and look at music that came out of jazz cities like New Orleans and St. Louis and Chicago. That had a huge impact. Ragtime has a huge impact on musical theater. It's kind of the merging of operetta and these American art forms that came from enslaved people, such as jazz and ragtime, that then once they get mixed together, we start getting what we now consider American musical theater. And when you fast forward into the late 1960s, we get a show called Hair that really brings rock and roll to the big stage in New York City. It's a hit. Then you follow that up with Tommy in 1993, The Who's Tommy, another, solid show, bringing rock and roll to the big stage. And then you really hit it big with Rent in 1996. And Rent becomes an international phenomenon and puts rock musicals on the map forever. They're not ever going away. And so now your casting directors and agents, if they hear somebody that comes in and sings what we used to call legit, the problem with the term legit is it means legitimate, and all singing is legitimate, not just that from European traditions. So I prefer to call it acoustically or classically influenced singing styles. So if you have an artist who walks into an audition with a classically influenced song, they're going to oftentimes be asked if they have anything pop rock. And when they're being asked for that, the expectation is they can sing it in the style that they would hear on the radio. And not radio anymore, on the streaming platform or on the YouTube. But if they can't do that, then it can often be a detriment and can hold them back in their casting. Now, yes, there are shows out there that are looking for classically oriented singers, about 5% of them, which means there's another 95% of the work out there that's not for classically based voices. They're looking for either contemporary voices, contemporary pop voices, or more of the traditional voice, which is a speech-based singing with a lot of belting in it. And again, because that's not a requirement to learn according to NASM standards, most schools don't teach it. So you go to a vocal performance school and you're not going to learn how to belt. You're not going to learn how to sing rock and roll. And those are essential skills if you want to be successful as a musical theater performer. And last but not least is dance. If you can't dance, you're going to have a really hard time breaking into the industry. It used to be that, yeah, you could maybe be the standby or cover for a leading role who is mainly a singing actor. But nowadays, to save money, it's usually people in the ensemble who are covering those roles. And if you're in the ensemble, that means the rest of the time when you're not performing the lead role, you are dancing and singing the entire show. So if you can't dance well enough to keep up with the dancers who sing, you're not going to be able to be cast even as the cover for the lead role, which makes it really hard to get performance experience when you're just getting started out. Not to mention that a lot of the first jobs for musical theater performers happen at summer stock festivals. And at a summer stock, you're usually going to do a multitude of shows. So yes, you may be perfect to sing Billy Bigelow in Carousel. But if they're also doing Little Shop of Horrors, they're doing a chorus line, and they're doing Rent, you better be able to dance to some level. If you can't, you're not going to be of use to, the theater company, and they're going to have enough people to audition that they can easily find somebody who graduated from a musical theater program with that skill set. So that's why, in general, I say there aren't really any good vocal performance programs, because most of them cannot prepare you for all the skills that you need to be successful in this industry. And I haven't even started to touch things like stage combat, movement, things like acting for the camera, which is a completely different skill set, understanding the business skills that you need to create your own website, social media following, headshot, and resume, which are, bare necessities for a graduating BFA student. So if there are musical or vocal performance programs you come across that can give you all those things, then sure, that could be a good pathway for your student. But if your student's heart is really set on musical theater, then they really need to either find that hidden program, that hidden gem that gives them all the skills that I just mentioned, or what they need to do is go pursue a musical theater degree. And, I know that can be a big shift if they're just coming to this in their senior year. I think it's important to point out that lots of students take gap years. And a gap year is where you don't go and start college with all of your friends. You hang out for a year. You take lessons, classes on your own, or you move to a big city and get an apartment and start working and auditioning and, of course, taking classes, and then re-audition for programs the next year. Most schools really like gap year students because they come to school with a certain level of maturity that's missing from those students that are straight out of undergrad. And every year when we do put together an incoming class for my school, I usually like to have 2 to 3 gap year students in the mix, at least minimum, because I really feel like it's a plus, a big benefit for the program moving forward. So don't fear the gap year, it can do a lot of good. The one thing not to do, though, in the gap year is do not take classes at a community college thinking you're going to get ahead, because you're not. What's going to happen is you're going to get marked as a transfer student. And unfortunately, universities are allowed to change up their financial aid offering based off of if you're an incoming undergrad, fresh out of high school, or if you're a transfer student. If you take a gap year, you're still a new undergrad student. But if you take even one class at a community college after receiving your high school diploma, you're now a transfer student. And at some schools, that can cut your scholarship in half. So you could literally go from being potentially able to earn a $23,000 scholarship to as low as a $7,000 or $8,000 scholarship just because you took classes at a community college. So it doesn't pay off. It actually ends up costing you money in the long run.
Wow, never would have thought that. So that's some really good, helpful information. Valerie, I hope everyone out there was taking notes. Matt, thanks for sharing all this really good, so many good tidbits and everything you got there. So there's a way to do it. You can still make it to Broadway, but you might have to go down a different road, I think is what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. Valerie, thanks for writing in. Let's jump to our next question. This one I threw in the mix. I wasn't quite sure who it came in from. So it's marked to coach, but basically third question tonight is, should classical singers, soprano, mezzo, develop their chest voice too? And so I'd love to jump into this one. Hopefully we can talk some registration.
Yeah, well, I just double checked. I got to check my sources, but according to Richard Miller, one of the most famous classical voice pedagogues of the 21st century, the answer is yes. And according to Manuel Garcia, who is the father of what we call functional voice training, the answer is yes. And in fact, if you start, looking around and reading the writings of a lot of different classical pedagogues, you're going to find out that they would also agree with me that, yeah, classical singers should develop their chest voice too. There's just a bit of a difference between what a musical theater major is going to do with their chest voice or what a commercial singer, popular singer, jazz singer, gospel singer is going to do with their chest voice. In the classical world, there is a certain kind of expected tone quality for sopranos and mezzos that's kind of been defined through generations of singers that have come before all of us. And this dates back all the way into the 1600s. And if you go into church music, it dates back even earlier than that. The sound has what we call chiaroscuro. And chiaro is Italian for bright, and oscuro is Italian for dark. And the term chiaroscuro means this balance of bright and dark in the singing voice. Now, the brightness comes from the vibration of the vocal folds, and the warmth or the darkness comes from the formation of the vowel. And what that means is you can't have one without the other. right? If you have just bright vocal folds, you're not going to get a classical sound. If you have just round vowels but not buzzy vocal folds, you're not going to get a classical sound. You need to get the buzziness from the vocal folds with the hooty vowel. To get that a more classical sound, the one that has the balance of both bright and dark. Now, as I said, that happens at the vocal fold level. And while we call this chest voice, it's not really the most accurate description of what it is. That term actually comes from a couple centuries ago when singers are trying to make sense of what they experienced when they were performing. And they would say that if they were making an sound, they felt vibrations in their chest. And if they made an sound, they felt more vibrations in their head. So that's why we get these terms chest and head. Now, because they've been around for hundreds of years and terminology is always difficult to change, we just continue to use it even in the voice science community. But what we're really talking about is vocal fold closure. And so this question, to be accurately phrased in terms of vocal function, would be, should classical singers develop their ability to firmly close their vocal folds together? And the answer is yes. Because when you start to develop the ability to bring those folds together, you can then start developing the ability to find every different option in between. And that's what we've traditionally called mix. So you want the singer to be able to go and on the same pitch. Now for sopranos and mezzos, we're going to focus that work on the F above middle C. We're not trying to take it much higher than that, just under that F below middle C. When they can make both sounds, you want to start getting them to fade to from one to the other. Or the opposite. When you're getting them to do that exercise, you're helping them coordinate their ability to close those vocal folds and to alter the amount of pressure on the vibrating edge. And that's going to give you these different registration qualities that we call chest and head. And it's going to be necessary because there is a lot of rep that goes below an F above middle C. And if you don't bring that firm closure together, you're not going to get those notes to project, and they're not going to be heard over a piano or an orchestra. Now, when we get above F, those muscles that help hold the vocal folds together are still engaged. In fact, they're engaged throughout the entire range. It's just that you're going to have to decrease the amount of engagement so you can go into a more classical sound. Belters try to maintain the amount of engagement to carry a little bit more of that thick vocal fold or that chest register up into their high notes so they can belt. So for a classical singer, you're going to need to transition out of that. But if you're working on training those vocal folds to come together in the bottom part of the voice, you can keep that togetherness as you go up, which will help eliminate breathiness in the voice. Because breathiness comes from an issue at the vocal fold level with registration, when your vocal folds lack the ability to come close together and press together firmly enough for the edges to vibrate. And if you never teach the voice how to do that, you can work on resonance shifts all day long, placement shifts all day long. You're never going to get this kind of solid sound you need to be a professional opera singer. So don't just take it from me. Go back and read up on Garcia. Go read Richard Miller's work. If you look at Stephen W. Smith's work in The Naked Voice, he's going to tell you about his variation of it, which is simply speaking. And you can also look up the work by Scott McCoy, Your Voice and Inside View, and he'll talk about the need for these registers as well. This whole idea that we mainly sing the head voice comes more from the Germanic school of singing, whereas this idea of engaging the chest voice or engaging that firmer closure comes from more of the Italianate Swedish school of singing. And to me, that's the way to go. That's what I hear the best opera singers in the world who are singing at the Met doing. And so I think if it's the path they go down, it's probably the path most singers should go down as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Great advice. Couldn't agree more. Definitely agree. You got to have firm closure, get those arytenoids engaged, and get that chest voice working. You're only going to have half your voice, without it. So that's it. We're not even going to let it be debated. We're going to go to the next topic. All right. So number 4 tonight is from Jay. Jay writes in, how much anatomical knowledge does a singer need to be successful? And so I know you've got some great different models, and I see that who's that guy in the back? What do you call him?
Oh yeah, Patty LeBone.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can bring Patty LeBone up here. or I don't know if that's part of this one. But yeah, let's talk about how much anatomical knowledge you need to know. Do I need to know everything in that structure, or what's going on?
So this is a great question. Okay, so there used to be a belief that too much knowledge could ruin your singing. I 100% disagree. I think that's a very old-fashioned idea. It's kind of science denial, and we all know that there's always people who embrace science and people that
It's
deny
really
science.
limiting to say that if you know too much, it's going to mess you up.
Yeah, but there is the kernel of truth in that statement is that if you try to sing based off of only the anatomy, that could also mess you up. If you're sitting there trying to focus on, oh, I need to tilt my hyoid bone like this, adduct my arytenoids, and then contract my abdominal wall to push my diaphragm into my lungs, and that's all you think about when you sing all the time, then yeah, that's too much. That's more than what you need.
That's maybe a little too mechanical.
Yeah. But understanding the mechanics is important because it helps us create what we call an accurate body map.
All right.
You see, the problem is for instance, let's think about the soft palate. A lot of singers have heard that they have to lift the soft palate, right? And we were told that in our choir. Mike and I were in high school choir together. We go way back. But in high school choir together, our choir director told us to lift the soft palate. And you will make a big gesture like this or think of really lifting it. Put a light bulb in the back. Well, if you think about a light bulb's pretty big. But the problem is the soft palate is not that big. In fact, this is an accurate size model of the head, and that's the soft palate right there. And it lifts to close this hole, which as you can see is narrower than my finger. The space is narrower than my finger, all right? So if you're going around trying to sing, lifting a light bulb in the back of your mouth, you're doing more than what the body can actually do. All you have to do to get the soft palate to go up is make a P sound. And then feel what happens in the back of your throat. Your palate's up. How do we know? Because during a P sound, you can't breathe in through your nose or blow out. As soon as you try to, the P goes away. That's because when you make a P, the soft palate lifts. That's all the effort that it takes, and that's all the movement it is. It's a centimeter or two, not inches, like we're often led to believe. Now, if you have never been introduced to the anatomy before, you may go the rest of your life trying to lift your soft palate by several inches. And usually what happens when people do that is they retract their tongue to make that space, and they create all kinds of weird jaw tension to make that space and neck tension because they're trying to shove that light bulb in the back. So they're going, and getting weird sounds. And when they stop doing all that extra work and just let it get the P place, hey, that's your soft palate up. Your soft palate being elevated often sounds different than another person's, and that's where the confusion comes in. Not to mention that people are listening to recordings, and recordings are not an accurate reflection of what somebody sounds like in a room 6 foot away from you. So our ears are distorted by recordings. We think we're supposed to sound a certain way, and then we have an inaccurate body map. So we take exercises that could be useful, and we do them inaccurately, which produces bad results. So that's just an example to say that the amount of anatomical knowledge you need is enough to make sure that you're actually training the parts of your body that need to be trained with exercises that actually train those parts of the body. And so that means knowing like the broad names or the broad idea of the parts, right? You could say, well, there's this horseshoe shaped bone on top of the larynx and like a shield one underneath of it and a ring one underneath of that. I can't remember the names. Cool. You still know that the larynx has a bone up here that's like a horseshoe, a bone here that's a shield, and it all sits on top of a ring-shaped bone as well. They're called the hyoid, thyroid, and cricothyroid cartilage, and those terms may not help you sing better, but knowing that your larynx is suspended from the hyoid bone, which is connected to your tongue, is going to help you finally understand why people tell you your tongue tension is a problem, because your tongue tension is affecting your larynx, right? So then when you're told, hey, get your tongue to do this, and you're going, I don't know, I don't like that sound. Why are they telling me to do that with my tongue? Well, if you know how the body works, you know how the voice works, you would realize, oh, well, I do depress my larynx. And since my tongue is pressing down on, or my tongue is connected to my larynx, this tongue shift might help me not depress my larynx. Move that tongue to an ah position instead, and we can go from ah to ah, which is muffled, which has more chiaroscuro. So that's the kind of knowledge that's helpful. A lot of singers think that they're breathing from their diaphragm. And they try to breathe way down low into their belly button so their diaphragm goes all the way down there so they can get enough air in their lungs. And they focus solely on air going down. Here's the problem with that. What you're actually doing when you inhale is you are filling up 200 to 300 million tiny balloons inside of your lungs. They're called alveoli. They're little pouch-like sacs. They're one cell thick, and they help the oxygen transfer over into your bloodstream and help get the CO2 out of your body so you can exhale that out. Those balloons are all inside your lungs, which extend from all the way up here at your sternum into the back, the lower back, as far as you can feel those bottom ribs, and of course, all along the bottom of the ribs that you feel on the front and sides. Those balloons are filling up in all directions. So air is not only going down, air is expanding in 360 degrees. So if you're focusing only on down, you're actually cheating yourself out of getting a full breath. And you're probably engaging muscles that you shouldn't be engaging. And if you're trying to get your diaphragm to go down to the belly button, I hate to tell you, it can't. The diaphragm only moves about a half an inch to an inch when you're just sitting there and not even thinking about what you're doing, like how you're breathing right now while you're watching. But when you actively breathe to sing, it only moves 2 to 3 inches. All right. The diaphragm is a muscle that connects and runs all along the bottom of your rib cage, and then it domes up a little bit. So 2 to 3 inches is really just bringing it down level with the bottom of your ribs. Yeah, stuff around your belly button might move out. That's because the diaphragm higher up in your body is pushing down and your guts get displaced and you feel it go out into your belly button. But if you're trying to force yourself to breathe all the way down into your belly button, that's not actually a thing. You're trying to force your body to do something that it's not designed to do. Now, do we feel sensations down there? Sure. Yeah, we do. And can you maybe remember at some point in time when you learn how to expand your lungs in 360 degrees that you can realize that you're doing it right if you notice that your belly's moving? Yep, you can do that too. Right? But that's coming from knowing how the voice works. You can monitor and go, oh yeah, when I breathe full and everything gets displaced, my stomach goes out a little bit. That's a different mindset than saying I'm going to breathe and push my stomach out. That's about tension. I'm going to breathe and push my stomach out is about tension. When I breathe, my stomach might go out is about function. And so really the core answer to sum this one up is you need to have enough anatomical knowledge about how your voice functions to make sure that it functions the way you want it to. You have to know how the voice works to get it to work in the way that you need it to for the style of music that you like to sing. And then you're going to use that information in the initial parts of your training. And what you're going to also do is take advantage of what we are learning from motor learning theory research, which is we go through different stages of learning. And that if we allow ourselves to go through those stages in the right way, eventually new skill sets become coordinated and programmed into our mind so they get to this automatic stage where we don't have to think about it anymore. So eventually, yes, you learn the anatomy to get the training down to fix any technical issues you have. But eventually, you're going to be able to not think about the anatomy anymore and focus on telling a story. And then when you focus on telling the story, your instrument will be coordinated enough that it will just respond to the story you're telling and create the vocal tones that you're looking for in every given moment.
Got it. Okay, so to sum that up, you're saying you got to know enough to know that you can make your voice function properly and get the results that you want.
Yeah.
Don't violate it. Don't do something it wasn't designed to do.
Yep. That's a good way of saying it, Mike, is you need to learn how the voice works so you don't try to force it to do something it wasn't designed to do. Just kind of like if I took my Prius to a racetrack and tried to run it at 120 miles an hour, it would probably end bad. It wasn't made. That Prius was not made to drag race. So yeah, so we got to know how our instrument is designed and built so we don't try to blow it.
Yeah, you should learn how the car goes around the racetrack before you try and take it around the racetrack. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, awesome. Jay, thanks for writing in. And if Matt didn't mention it, we have we actually have a course called How the Voice Works. So if you want to know more about how the voice works, we'll drop that link up, but you can totally check out this great course that's got all this information about it. And it makes it so you don't have to, hurt your brain trying to learn it all. So Matt's done all the hard work for you guys. So, okay, I'm going to jump into our last question tonight. This one comes in from Derek. Derek, thanks for writing it. Do you have any good exercises for tongue tension? Okay, so another tongue tension one. I know this is one of your favorite ones to teach about, Matt. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good. So, yeah, tongue tension. We have lots of exercises. This comes up all the time. And so, let's see. What haven't we touched for a while? Let me see if I have any straws up here. We have straws. Yep, I got a straw over here. Let's talk about extended tongue phonation and improving your proprioception of where your tongue is. All right, so this is going to help you build an accurate map of what your body is doing. You're going to get a regular straw. I bought 5,000 straws before we learned that they harmed sea life. So please know these straws are going to end up in a landfill one way or another if I use them or if I throw them away. For the record, Voice Teachers 5,000 straws will last you 10 years. If you have the students getting disposable straws as well, which is what I like to do. I like to show them what to do with this and then tell them to buy a disposable straw or a chopstick for some of these exercises, something that's more reusable so we can help save the planet. What you're going to do is you're going to lay this on your bottom lip, and then you're going to stick your tongue out over top of it. And then you're going to vocalize in that position. Ah. And with this straw underneath, you are going to become hyper aware of what your tongue is doing. Because anytime that we draw attention to a part of the body, the brain will start to pay attention to what's happening with that part of your body. Like right now, you're not thinking about your left foot. But now you are, because I just mentioned it. Now you're wondering if your foot is going to sleep because you're sitting on it. Or you're thinking, man, these shoes actually really rub against my heel. Or you're thinking, man, I've stood too long today. My feet are really tired. Right? But you weren't thinking that before I told you to think about it. The same idea applies here. Most of the time, singers aren't thinking about what their tongue is doing. And telling them to just visualize the tongue is one thing. But putting touch to the tongue, palpating the tongue, waking it up, getting the senses activated, starts to get a brain connection. That then you can use the straw in vocalization to retrain the movement pattern. So I like to use this one when somebody's tongue is retracting, when they're going, ah. And the movement pattern I want to change is that urge to retract. And what I want to do is to teach those muscles that they can relax and let go. So what I'm going to do then is use this straw to get those muscles out of the way, because they're disengaged when the tongue is out, and then sing in that position. Ah, teaching the tongue to let go. Ah, ah. Then after I've done that for like 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to let the tongue rest back into the mouth. Ah, and see if I can still maintain that freedom without it retracting. Then I'd keep vocalizing up the scale. Ah, and I'd be listening for places where that tongue is going back. Ah, like right there. And then I'd stop, place the straw, get my proprioception activated again. Ah, and alternate between the two. Ah, 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 until I get it to the place that I want it to be. So grab a straw. Like I said, reusable straws, chopsticks are the best because they mean save the earth. And give that a shot, Derek, and see if that helps. There's also narrowing tension that can be an issue. We've talked about that on past shows, so you can catch one of the replays to look for that. And in general, I just want to remind everybody that what we perceive as tongue tension is often a lack of tongue agility. That we just don't have a good connection between our brain and our tongue. We're used to speaking in more of just casual speech where we don't over-articulate vowels or consonants, and we don't really think too much about sustaining vowels. We don't sustain vowels in speech. So you just lack the coordination to do that skill that's necessary for certain styles of singing. But through exercises and dedicated practice, you're going to be able to retrain your brain, build up that neurological connection to your tongue. And as you improve the agility, you should notice that vowels and consonants get much easier.
Awesome. Great exercise, Derek. I hope that helps you. And please write us back. Let us know any more specifics, and hopefully we can get you the right exercise there. So, Matt, I just saw we had a question come in from Jordan. So I'm gonna switch over here. It's our last planned question. We'll take any other questions you guys have from the chat. So drop your questions in. Now's the time. We're taking them. All right. So this first question comes in from Jordan. Jordan, thanks for writing in. Writes in, could you talk about how to develop consistency in the voice? Sometimes I feel like my voice changes a lot depending on the day.
Good.
Uh,
So,
yeah.
Jordan, your answer to this kind of tells me that it's more than likely a motor skill development issue that you're dealing with right now. So, consistency in the voice happens when we have coordinated all of the important components to the point where they're all functioning in the automatic mode. So, automaticity is that level where you don't even have to think about anything, your voice just responds. And that happens over diligent practice and time working with your skill set.
Thousands and thousands of hours
Yes, it
every
takes lots and lots and lots of time.
minutes a day, 15 minutes a day,
And
15
what
minutes.
it can happen sometimes is you start working on multiple skills at the same time. And, in some instances, we need to be doing that. And the possible negative side effect is as your brain is trying each day when you're practicing to shift its focus in different directions, we start to see some inconsistencies. So let's say you're trying to work on balancing your, alignment, your skeleton, while trying to get nice low breaths and keeping your jaw free. That's three things for your brain to focus on, and each is a separate motor skill. So if you're practicing all three of them together, your progress might be slow and very inconsistent as your brain shifts its attention from one of those components to the other. So one of the things you can do to help in a situation like that is to really slow down and just focus on each individual component first before putting them together. So if you've been working on balancing your skeleton, just focus on that for 5 minutes, going through whatever exercises, whatever body mapping drills that you've been taught on how to get your body aligned. Then focus only on the kind of breathing that you've been working on, focusing on taking breaths and just hissing them out. So your vocal folds aren't even involved, just hissing or blowing out air through a straw. Then spend about 5 to 10 minutes on just getting your jaw to loosen up by doing some self-massage, doing some tongue jaw isolation exercises, and awakening your body to what's going on. Then see if you can't combine two of the three. So make sure that as you're really thinking about your alignment and trying to get your expansion, whatever kind of expansion you're trying to get, and then start vocalizing by focusing only on those two things. And then when you feel comfortable that you're breathing the way that you want, that you're maintaining your alignment, then add the jaw on next and see if you can maintain the alignment, the breath, and add the jaw. By breaking that down into manageable steps, you're allowing your brain to program those processes more efficiently than if you're trying to do all three at the same time and program all three at the same time. Now, for every motor skill that you're trying to learn, you're going to first be in the cognitive stage. And the cognitive stage of development is where you need a lot of external feedback. You need somebody telling you the quality of the movement, saying, yes, that was good, or no, that wasn't quite right. Your brain needs that feedback to help learn how to execute the given skill. You're going to live in that stage often for 6 to 8 weeks. And you'll know you're getting out of it when you start figuring it out on your own without needing to be cued, but you still need a little help. When you still need just a little help, you're entering the motor learning stage. And the whole goal in the motor learning stage is to transition you from needing just a little help to not needing any help, that you can just open your mouth to sing and your jaw stays out of the way. And that's when we know you're in that automatic phase. So the inconsistencies, try that. Try chunking the exercises that you're working on, breaking them down so you're not trying to do 3 or 4 things at once. Try to acknowledge when or what stage of learning you think you are and whatever it is you're practicing. You're probably going to find that part of why it feels so inconsistent is you're practicing things that are still in either that cognitive or motor learning stage. And because of that, it's going to be natural that there's going to be some inconsistencies. And then keep a practice journal to track how those different motor skills are progressing. So that way you can look back and go, oh, well, 6 weeks ago, I wrote that it was really hard just to get the masseter muscle to let go. And now that's not a problem at all. I'm just having a problem articulating certain vowels while keeping it open. And, if you think about that, trying to really dissect that and use that journal to track your progress, you'll be able to have better insight of maybe some technical skills where even though you're doing all the work, things just aren't changing, which would mean you might want to go back and talk to your teacher for some extra advice.
Yeah, great feedback. And Jordan, I'll just share on this one. I think as a singer, because our our body is our instrument, that almost every day you go to a voice lesson, you probably would have a little bit different lesson, right? Your voice might be a little tired, maybe what you were eating, what you were drinking, how you were sleeping. All those things can play a factor. So I would give you a very simple challenge, or just, so a suggestion to try this week, which would just be try a simple scale. Could be a 5-tone scale, could be an octave scale, 8 tones, could be a 12-tone scale. But try the same scale. Just do it on a simple vowel. Just get rid of other things, and just try and sing the same scale 5 days in a row, and start to notice: am I feeling the same thing each day? Can I get to the same notes each day? And as you start to repeat that, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're like, that scale's easy. Now you can add other scales to it. And the scale, this is what Matt's talking about, the motor skill development. If you haven't had a voice lesson with a teacher, a lot of it, I don't want to call it boring, but some of it's just repetitive. You're working out. You're doing the same scales. You're getting those in there. So I would say try that same scale over and over again, and let us know next week. Did you notice that, okay, I started to feel more consistent because you're doing the same routine? It's kind of like going to the gym, right? You start going to the gym, the first 6 weeks might be, hey, I'm just going to do upper and lower. But when you get that 8 week, you start to see some growth and improvement. So I would just say try and do that, simple week. Start with a week, then we'll expand it. And as you start to build up that same scale, you'll notice, hey, I'm feeling more confident. I can get these notes each day now, but now it's just this one note at the top that feels a little bit different. So I
And
would just kind of try.
one other thing worth mentioning too is I saw there was a second half to this question, and
Okay.
he says that his range varies a couple notes per day. Jordan, that's not unusual either for
That's
all levels of singers, because like humidity shifts. Like I walked into my office today and the humidity was 24%. I was sitting in there. I didn't notice the humidity monitor until I was like, man, I feel dry today. That's like ridiculously dry. Whereas then,
that's moist. That's moist out here.
yeah, right out there it is, right? But so, if I get a humidifier running in that room and get it back up to the more comfortable stage for singers, which is around like 40%, 40 to 50%,
Sure.
I'll probably feel a lot different because I'm breathing in, moist air instead of breathing in dry air all day. That environmental factor does have an impact.
It's a big fact. It's kind of like the difference between, driving on a wet road or a dry road. It's
Yep.
got extra lubrication.
Like going running, that can impact it. If you're breathing heavy while running, you're just sucking in a lot of dry air. And if you're a little dehydrated, your vocal folds might get dehydrated. Then you go to practice a couple hours later and you're like, why is my voice different today? Because you went running this morning and you were a little dehydrated and it was hot and dry outside. It could be something as, like that you ate the night before. You could have eaten something and had a little silent reflux, and that silent reflux ended up, harming your vocal folds a little bit. And so they're agitated and they're not going to give you the sounds you're looking for. It could be you talked more than normal the day before. And by talking more than normal, you dried out your vocal folds a little bit and they're a little swollen the next day. So you're not going to get the pitches you want. It could be that you sang a little bit too much the day before and you're coming back. You may have had a great practice session. Let's say on Monday, you have this great practice session. You got a high A that's popping out. It's amazing. You're digging it. You wake up, go the next day, and the high A is gone. And you're going, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. Your body's trying to recuperate. Just like if you go to the gym and you do a bunch of bench pressing and you wake up the next day and you're sore, you can't bench press what you did the day before.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
there is this fatiguing that can happen where then
The thing is, we don't have the same receptors like that. We feel the same soreness. Like
you
that's
don't.
a little message.
You're right. You're right. There's no nerve endings on the surface of the vocal folds, so you don't even know. So all you do is just notice, hey, I can't reach these notes, or these notes are hard. They don't sound the same. And so that tells us two things. One, that you may have worked out a little too hard the day before. And two, that indicates that it's a developing skill set and that note is starting to come along, but it's not fully there yet. And that's where, again, the motor learning stuff applies. So, there's a whole wide variety of things. There can be hormone shifts day to day. Sometimes we just have emotional mood shifts. If you wake up one day and you have a lot of anxiety, the anxiety can actually trigger muscular activation in the muscles that surround your larynx, and it can limit your range. So the next thing you know, you're just stressed out about a test and you can't sing high notes, which stresses you out, which makes your throat tense up even more, which makes you go back to the practice room to try to sort it out. Nothing shows up, which stresses you out even more. You don't sleep well that night. And the next day, you still can't sing high notes.
Circle of
Yeah.
frustration right there.
So that's why it's important. Again, like, how much should I know about how the voice works? Enough to understand this stuff so you don't drive yourself crazy, so that you're able to say, yeah, I like enough. Like, this is all I need right now. Right?
Jordan, I hope that helps you. All right. I see we have one more question.
Good.
Man, this will be our last one tonight. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Okay, so Pato writes in, I'm curious about an exercise I read about which uses a cork between the teeth, in front or in between the molars or somewhere else, a full cork or half. Could you please explain the purpose of each position of cork? Is this more related to classical training?
Great. So no, this is related to functional training, because the purpose of the cork comes down to vocal function. So the cork width of regular wine cork is a little less than 3/4 of an inch wide, which just happens to be the biggest amount of jaw opening you can make without the jaw starting to slide forward. And so the jaw the condyle goes right up into the socket, but then once it expands past 3/4 of an inch, it starts to glide forward a little bit. And for people with TMJ, we don't want the jaw doing that. So a cork can be used for singers with TMJ or other jaw tension to show them what's like the max amount of opening that they can make. Now, it can also be used to help stretch out some of the muscles that help close the jaw, like those lateral pterygoid muscles, but more importantly, the masseter muscle, which is the muscle that runs from your upper cheekbone down to your lower cheekbone, and the mastoid muscle up here, the temple muscles up here. I'm blanking. I'll come back with it in a second. But the muscles that are up here, these connect down here to your jaw as well. And if you put a cork in between your teeth, your body's reflex is going to be to bite down, and that doesn't feel good. So your body will end up not fighting that and just relaxing into that opening. It's kind of putting a stretch on all of those muscles right in here. And then you vocalize there. Ah, while trying to give in to that extra opening or extra stretch. I'll do it just like this with my finger. Ah, ah. Now, you can use this for other things as well. If you have somebody who's constantly trying to open the front of their mouth and you want them to start making resonance adjustments behind the hump of the tongue, getting a cork or an Altoid in between the front teeth or a pencil in between the front teeth, you can use different sizes for different purposes. Well, then give them no option but to make changes behind the hump of the tongue when they are addressing their resonance. Now, the one with the corks in between the teeth, or the Altoids, which is what I prefer because they taste way better than cut up corks. The idea be putting them between the molars is to isolate your jaw so it's not moving, so you can focus on the movement of the tongue and the lips when forming vowels. And that comes from Arthur Lessac, Lessac. And he is a voice and speech person for the acting world, but a lot of his stuff applies to the voice world as well. And what he said is, similar to what I say, is that a lot of times this impurity in vowels or impurity in consonants is a lack of coordination of the lips and the tongue. So if you put Altoids between the molars, you stop the jaw from moving. So I'm just going to do it like this. And then it makes all the focus of everything be on the lips and the tongue. I, O, U, O, I. And it allows your brain to really tune into those micro movements of the tongue and the lips, learning exactly how you want to resonate each and every vowel. Then you spit out the corks or the Altoids, chew them up, and then do the same thing, and you're going to notice that your tongue and your lips function differently, and your jaw is going to be less involved. You'll have the freedom then to make different jaw openings with different lip combinations and different tongue combinations. And that's when you can really set your voice free, when you are in complete control of the motor system that controls articulation and resonance. So, this is a prop. It's a tactile approach that uses these blocks in your jaw to change the way that your jaw functions during singing. It's important to mention that if the cork between your front teeth puts too much tension on your jaw, then it's not the right exercise for you. Some people, it's just a little bit too much opening on their jaw, and we need to do some massage work or other work first. And the Altoids, you may find, depending on where you are in your range, it's not enough opening. So just don't take it up any further in your range. or flip the Altoids vertically. So you can do one part of your range a lot of times with them horizontally, and then you need to flip them vertically to do a lot of times more of the upper part of your range. But again, it's a tool. It's a tool to teach your body something new. There is, in some ways, a novelty effect to this. And a novelty effect is anytime you introduce something new, it messes up the status quo. And a lot of times you'll see an improvement because of it. So this particular exercise isn't only novelty effect. So like something that's only novelty effect would be balancing a peacock feather as you sing. The balancing of the peacock feather and moving of your arm does nothing to make you a better singer.
That was the solution to all of our singers.
Yes. No, not. But what it does is it distracts you. It's a distraction technique to stop you from thinking so much. And guess what? Most people sing better in a masterclass setting when you give them a peacock feather.
It's the peacock feather, everyone.
Yeah, right? So it works, but it only works for a few times, because after it's no longer novel to your brain, and your brain's like, oh, I can still do that and retract my tongue. And then the tongue starts to go back, right? So what you have to do anytime you're using some novelty technique is make sure that you reinforce to the brain why it's working. Getting the feather, and then after you've done that in a masterclass, you have to say, see, you were so distracted that you stopped thinking so much, and that's why you sang better. So what I need you to do is just not worry what you sound like anymore and stop thinking so much without the peacock feather. And then you put it back and forth until their body learns that, oh, that's an acceptable thing to do. So with the corks and the Altoids, it's the same thing. You're going to put them in, take them out, put them in, take them out until your body realizes, oh, I don't have to bite down so hard if you're using the cork in the front, or, oh, I can open up my mouth more again if you're using that cork in the front, if you're dealing with someone who closes their mouth too much. Or the Altoids help somebody realize, oh, my tongue actually does have to really arch up to form an E vowel, and I can't compensate with my jaw anymore. And all those things are good things to improve your articulation and resonance. And that's why I like corks, and that's why I like Altoids.
Absolutely. We are not advocating taking corks or Altoids to your next audition. So please.
No.
These are only tools to get as a means to the end. So thanks for your question, Pato. Appreciate that. And thanks everyone for tuning in to our show tonight. If you have any questions, please drop them in. We love feedback from everyone. So Matt, any final thoughts?
Nah, enjoy the last week or so of leaves in the trees. It's been beautiful, but they're all falling. So, happy fall. And, with the leaves falling, what's going to happen is all the moisture is going to get stuck underneath of them, and mold's going to start kicking up. And then if you go and walk through the leaves, you're going to stir up those mold spores. And the next thing you know, you're going to be having an allergy attack, and you're going to think you have COVID. You don't.
Already happened. The cold front, or at least out here, it got to 70. But
yeah. So take your allergy medicine or your nasal sprays if you're allergic to leaves, because it is
allergies are kicking up.
Yeah, allergies, it's definitely the allergy season.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
Good night.
Bye-bye.